Dear English literature learners, I'd like to give you some idea on short questions with answers on the age of Joshua, 1350 to 1450, Part B. This video is confined to short questions with answers on the age of Joshua. My next video will be on broad questions with answers on the age of Joshua, 1350 to 1450, Part C. Part B, short questions with answers. Question 1. Write a short note on the 100 Years' War. Answer. The long drawn-out conflict between England and France that occurred between 1337 and 1453 are generally known as 100 Years' War. In the course of this war, Edward III secured English supremacy of the English Channel by the naval victory of Sluys. He was the first king who conspicuously directed policy to commercial expansion, which was one of the objects of his French wars. The immediate results of the war served one great purpose, that of developing national pride among Englishmen who had been living for long under the shadow of the French and had nearly forgotten this sense of national dignity. The victory at the Battle of Crécy, 1346, and of Poitiers kindled patriotism among people, filling them with self-confidence. As these crucial battles were largely won by the English yeomen, middle class sprang up to ascendancy. The English Parliament came into prominence. This was a revolutionary phenomenon, bringing about changes in class structure and in the process helping the growth of democratic awareness. Question 2. Write a short note on the Black Death. Answer. During the reign of Edward III, the outbreak of plague was known as Black Death. It was an unusual phenomenon. This terrible pestilence, with which the medical science of the time was powerless to cope, carried off no less than 1/3 of the population. Contemporary accounts have recorded vividly the terrible effect that it had on the lives of common people. In some cases, the entire population of towns was wiped out, as in the north of the country, nearly all the laborers who had escaped from the plague left the country. So the significant result of Black Death was that it considerably influenced the value of labor. As 1/3 of the population having been removed, there was created a scarcity of labor and corresponding demand for higher wages. Taking advantage to the conditions, many villains deserted their masters, left the country, and began to start living as freemen. This created a very serious situation for King Edward III, and the Parliament took a serious note for his Celtic action. The Parliament enacted a series of statutes which made it unlawful for the laborer to demand higher wages and inflicted severe forms of punishment to those who violated it. Question 3. What do you know about the Peasants' Revolt? Answer. During the 4th year of Richard's reign in 1381, there occurred a great revolt among the peasantry. This famous and bloody Peasants' Revolt was led by Wat Taylor and Jack Straw. It was a rebellion of an astonishing magnitude and suddenness. For the first time in English history, the workmen became dimly aware of their power and used it. The claims of the lower orders were encouraged by the preaching of John Bell, a priest who spread the doctrine that all men were born equal and had equal rights. He took as his text, "When Adam dealt and Eve span, who was then gentleman." Bell's saying was the motto of kind of socialism. The uprising occurred in 1381, and the peasants in large numbers were armed with hatchets, spades, and pitchforks, demonstrated their discontent in an unruly and violent manner. For a while, it paralyzed the administrative system and stunned the country. But the reaction was quite quick to come, and severe repression or suppression followed, snuffing out the revolt. Historians have pointed out that though the peasants' revolt was crushed, it undeniably cast a deep shadow on the lives of the lower classes. Those people understood that their power and their spirit for independence was awakened in the old feudalistic system. Some critics see it as a significant step towards modernization. Question 4. Give an account of John Wycliffe. Answer. John Wycliffe, 1320 to 1384, was the most powerful English figure of the 14th century. He was called the first Protestant who was a professor at Oxford and chaplain to King Edward III. He was well versed in theology and law and was drawn into the struggle that broke out in 1365 between the king and the pope. He is strong in his denunciation of the corruption of the church. He wrote a large number of tracts and pamphlets in English. He was the first translator of the Bible into the English language. His translation is faulty, for his chief aim was to be liberal. His chief aim was to be literal. He abounds too much in Latin construction. His English is not polished, but vigorous and pointed, having a homely simplicity. Thus, he supplied the first elements of the biblical language, which became an integral part of English prose. John Wycliffe popularized his ideas by means of the preachers who were known as Lollards. His translation of Bible laid the foundation of the authorized version of the Bible of 1611. Question 5. Write a note on Caxton's printing press. Answer. The introduction of printing into England was made by William Caxton, who set up his printing press at Westminster in 1476. This constitutes an important landmark in the literary growth of England. Printing, in fact, was found instrumental to the expansion of literary activities and to the cultivation of literary standards and tastes. Caxton's earliest production in print include Legate's Temple of Glass, Life of Our Lady, Chaucer's Parliament of Fowls, The Houses of Fame, Troilus and Cressida, and the Canterbury Tales, Gower's Confessio Amantis, Mellor's Morte d'Arthur, etc. Caxton deserved a high commendation for his great venture that has served to enrich literature. He should not be taken as a mere professional printer. He was a lover of literature who earnestly endeavored to make books popular among all. The Renaissance of England had come with Caxton. The immediate impact of Caxton printing press was to turn men's minds to the past and to perpetuate the Middle Ages, but it provided books cheap in abundance and thus rendered a great service to the cause of education. It created intellectual curiosity, a desire to learn. Caxton printing press preserved the early humanist literature and the works of the earliest court poets, and thus laid the foundation of the great literature of the Elizabethan era. Question 6. Write a short note on Morter D'Arthur. Answer. The greatest English work of the 15th century is undoubtedly the Morter D'Arthur, a collection of Arthurian romances told in simple and vivid prose. Sir Thomas Malory is the author of this book. In this book, the French Arthurian romances. In this book, the French Arthurian romances are drawn upon to create a prose romance of great length and detail. This book is written with a uniform dignity and fervor. It is a skillful blend of dialogue and narratives and is full of color and life. This style has a transparent clarity and a poetic sensitivity which makes Malory the great prose stylist. Malory's dialogue is singularly terse and direct, so that his prose is as capable of irony as Chaucer's prose. The subject matter of the book belongs to the medieval age, but Malory himself, with a desire to preserve the literary monuments of the past, belongs to the Renaissance. He deserves our lasting gratitude for attempting to preserve the legends and poetry of Britain at a time when scholars were chiefly busy with the classics of Greece and Rome. In fact, Malory became a master of simple, flowing English, primitive in structure, but capable of considerable flexibility and falling into pleasant natural rhythms. Rhymes. Question 7. Write a short note on Piers the Plowman. Answer. In the English literature of the 14th century, Langland's Piers the Plowman stands out as the most renowned work after the Canterbury Tales of Chaucer. Piers the Plowman is an impressive allegory deeply concerned with religious, ethical, social, economic problems of the time. The framework of the poem is allegorical. It is written in several versions. The chief forms of this poem are A text, B text, and A text, B text, and C text. Of these, the first version was written about 1362 and contains the version about Piers Plowman and the version of do well, do better, do best. The second version of B text was written about 1377, includes the fable of rats and the cat. The C text has a few hundred lines more than the B text. Through these versions, Langland conveyed a quite pointed account of the moral, faith, and social values of the age. Piers the Plowman is a mighty achievement of Langland and ranks very high as a social and moral study. The poem has a threefold aspect: as a picture of the contemporary life, as a satire on the corruption of the church, and as an allegory of life. Langland's place in the history of allegorical literature of England is certainly very high. This immortal Pilgrim's Progress, the Immortal Pilgrim's Progress of Bunyan is certainly a direct descendant of Langland's Piers the Plowman. Question 8. Write a short note on Chevy Chase. Answer. Chevy Chase is one of the outstanding popular ballads of the 15th century. It is the oldest and the first epical ballads. Its subject is half historical, being the struggle between Percy of Northumberland and Douglas of Scotland in the beginning of the 15th century, a subject on which many popular ballads exist. The ballad describes the fierce fighting between the rival parties. Douglas is slain, and Percy is shown to lament for the death of his valiant enemy. Gallantry gives way to chivalrous nobility. Chevy Chase stands out as a classical example of the epical ballad. It contains matters both fierce and chivalrous. It has the grandeur of fragmentary epic in its details of warfare and note of chivalry. Again, it possesses to epical directness and simplicity in its narrative details. It is found inspiring for subsequent ballad writers and has much significance in the history of English balladry. It moved Sir Philip Sidney to write Arcadia. This ballad is a song of recitation and has the meter preeminently of the ballads of the 7 accented lines with 2 divisions. Chevy Chase is one of the medieval poems which influenced Romanticism of the 19th century. Question 9. Write a short note on Not Brown Maid. Answer. Not Brown Maid. Sorry. The answer, the Not Brown Maid is a popular and a successful poem of the 15th century. The theme of the ballad is love. It is all about the story of Not Brown Maid, a baron's daughter, and her devoted love for a squire. She follows with utmost constancy her beloved, who tries to avoid her. Ultimately, the steady maid gets her reward, and the squire, who is actually a noble lord in disguise, agrees to marry her. The end is happy. Nothing could be more artistic than the 36-lined stanzas of this ballad with their alternating refrains. Each stanza has lines of 7 accents, and a system of multiplied rhymes puts a very severe constraints upon the plot. Simplicity of style and sincerity of tone are unmistakable in the lines, while the lady, who may be supposed to be the author, praised the part of Not Brown Maid. Other speaker takes that of the absconder. There is a dialogue. Each of them in turn is speaking a stanza, which is refrain. It is simplicity and homeliness of feeling. It is a fine specimen of popular ballad. Question 10. Write a short note on the Canterbury Tales. Answer. Chaucer's masterpiece, the Canterbury Tale, is one of the most famous works in all literature, which fills the English period of Chaucer's life. It is the crowning piece of Chaucer's creative literary art. The Canterbury Tales proves a unique work of English literature for all times to come. Chaucer's creative mastery, which is manifested decisively in his sense of realism, gift of wit and humor, art of characterization, and power of narration, is nowhere so diverting and triumphant as in the Canterbury Tales. Chaucer painted the Canterbury life vividly, faithfully, and realistically. In the Canterbury Tales, he was essentially a man of the world who had genuine sympathy for all classes of people. His observation of the men and women of his time was deep, accurate, and clear-sighted. Knights, squires, merchants, sailors, scholars, doctors, monks, laborers, and even rogues, all classes of people are presented in his picture gallery of prologue to the Canterbury Tales. In portraying these pictures, Chaucer adopted the function of a dramatist. The characters reveal themselves through their actions, deeds, and the story's detail. Chaucer portrays the picture of Canterbury life. The Canterbury Tale is a panorama of 14th century English life. It is rich comedy, variety of humor, and descriptive powers in the study of characters. The Canterbury Tale is an unique achievement. Question 11. Write a short note on Chaucer's humor. Answer. Chaucer is not only a great narrative poet, a storyteller in verse, but also a great humorist. In fact, he was a born humorist. He was the master of humor and irony. He belongs to the great humorists of English literature. He is in the company of Cervantes, Rabelais, Molière, Fielding, and Dickens. Chaucer's humor is always sympathetic and of the finest type. It bears a close similarity to Shakespeare's humor. It is marked with a freshness of outlook, clarity, tolerance, and forgiveness. It is natural and spontaneous. In the Canterbury Tales, we find the full flowering of Chaucer's humorous genius. Chaucer's humor is essentially English in character, and it is not the wit of a Frenchman. Chaucer raises humor at his own cost, as at the cost of the pilgrims. He refers to himself as the simple, unlettered man. My wit is short, ye may well understand. Tolerance, intelligence, and capacity for enjoying life are the mainspring of Chaucer's humor. He observes everything and records each detail with smiling eyes. Chaucer's humor is modern. It is essentially human. It is based on a characteristically Renaissance concept. He finds the material of his humor in the rich fields of character. There is a touch of irony and wit in Chaucer's humor. Of course, his irony has little of pugnancy and more of entertainment. Question 12. Write a short notes on Confessio Amantis. Answer. Confessio Amantis is the last important work of John Gower. It was written in 1383 to 1384. In English, it is an ambitious project to present in pleasing verse taken from various sources. Confessio Amantis is a long compilation of 40,000 octosyllabic verses. It contains more than 100 stories of varying length and form, varying length and from diverse sources, from the Holy Bible to Ovid. There is a well-set plan to tell some engaging tales in a simple and melodious style. Confessio Amantis differs substantially from Gower's precious works written in French and Latin. There is no endeavor in his work to impose moral instructions or ethical matters or social behaviors. Here, Gower has a straight objective to tell tender stories about love, which is a major motive in human conduct and function. Even he announces that he will leave morality for love. Though the work appears artificial and lacks Chaucerian fitness and aptness, it is not without literary qualities. His descriptive art is well combined with his meditative depth. Question 13. Write a short note on the Bruce. Answer. The Bruce is the main poetic work of John Barbour, the national poet of Scotland in the 14th century. Though he was a churchman, his principal work, the Bruce, was not religious or ethical, but rather political and patriotic. The Bruce is a sort of national epic for the Scottish people. It is a work of chivalry and contains some descriptive passages, particularly about the Battle of Bannockburn. The Bruce is an epic based on recent history of Scotland. All the events center around the figure of Bruce, the national hero. There is a greater aptitude in the ideas of freedom, patriotism, independence, which animate the verses. The poem is about the struggle of independence and narrates in a heroic manner the adventures of Bruce. The Bruce is a patriotic tale having some traditional matter of hero worship. It embodies the spirit of patriotism and nationalism. It is crowned with national songs. One of the most important lines one of the most important lines from Bruce that has gained popularity is, "Freedom is a noble thing." Though based on history, Bruce is like other national epics, contains a good ideal of fictional matters. Much materials of romances are found mingled with the facts of history. All this, however, serves to add to the poetical as well as popular appeal to the work. Thank you for watching. I'm Shamim Sarwar. My next video is on the broad questions with answers on the age of Joshua. Have a nice day.